Okay. So whenever you want to start, I'll just do it a little bit.
You ready?
Yes.
It all started with the mustard seeds. Like, no, I'm kidding. No, seriously. I came to Christ after being in an emotionally abusive relationship. During this time, I was pregnant with my youngest son, and I began to feel like really lost and really alone, and I just didn't have anything. And it got to a point where I remember sitting down in my bathroom tub, and I was just crying out, like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, God help me. I didn't even know who God was. I was just calling out for any kind of help. My name is Tan. I am 30. Ooh, I'm 29.
Period.
And I love Jesus. Background, I am a mom of two, 8-year-old and 5-year-old. I love them so much. And I don't know. My background is a little crazy. I come from a home of 2 other siblings, an older one, and an older sister and a younger brother. And then I have 2 brothers on my dad's side, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I didn't know what else to say about myself. What do I want people to know after watching this video? I hope this reaches the people that are skeptical of God or believe in God but not sure exactly who he is, or even how to encounter him, or even what it means or what it looks like to get to him. Because sometimes it doesn't. There's a verse in the Bible where it talks about how the Lord seeks us first and we don't seek him. So when you actually start looking for him, you'll see that he's been there the whole time, and he'll actually answer in a way that you can't deny it, because when he knows us all, and when you ask for something, he knows exactly how to answer it. So I think for me, and what you'll see in this video is how he answered that prayer for me in a way where I couldn't deny him, because he knew that if he would have did it in any other way, I probably still wouldn't have paid attention, because over the years I've seen how he's had his hand on my life the whole time, and I just didn't see him because I didn't know him, and I didn't know how to get to him, but he knew how to get to me. And I just hope and I pray that whoever listens to this actually can see him in the midst of whatever they're going through, and when they actually pray it and mean it with their whole heart, be prepared for what he'll show you and how he'll get to you. I was pregnant with my youngest son, and the person that I was with, his drinking had gotten worse during that time. I felt super alone. I ended up going to every appointment by myself, and right around like 5 or 6 months, because we had planned to, once we found out, we had planned to like keep it to ourselves. And I remember during that time, his god sister had lost her baby, and we had drove up to DC to go to the funeral for the baby. And later that day, I remember going to his grandma's house, and we were eating dinner as we normally would, and I had left to go somewhere. And when I got back, he had came out and he was like, oh yeah, I told him that you were pregnant. And I was like, okay. And then even the feedback that I got during that time, his mom pretty much along the line said something of, like, she said now isn't the right time, like insinuating that I should get an abortion. And times were rough, but that doesn't mean that I should take the life of my child. So I not only felt alone from him, but I also felt a whole different experience than I felt with my daughter. So that just put me in a headspace to like really like seclude myself and to be more by myself, but try to pour love into this baby in a way that I wasn't even getting the love. So we ended up going back home, and I was also working during that time. But his drinking just continued to like escalate. And I was working at a pet shop, which I love animals, and I loved working at the pet shop. And the lady that I was working with was like, he showed up late. He ended up not coming home one night, and I'm pregnant, big belly, out here looking for a grown man. And I was just like, I don't know what I did to get here or what I did to deserve any of this. And then I ended up losing my job. The lady didn't fire me, but she was like, you have to resign. She was like, and she was crying. She was like, I don't want to let you go. She was like, but I have to, like, company standards or whatever. She was like, but if you ever need to, like, come back or you want to come back, like, the door's always open. So that just added to everything that I was going through. And then, like, the emptiness of being pregnant, and you're already going through all these emotions. And he just didn't, there is just so many things that was happening during that time, as far as I'm, like, drinking and getting, like, verbally aggressive or just not caring or saying hurtful things with his words. And then when he was sober, like, just kind of brushing it under the rug. And then there would be moments where it would get better, but then it would get worse. And it was just like one thing after another. And then I just ended up being like, I don't know where else to go or what else to do. Like, and I just started crying out to God. I just didn't have anything. And it got to a point where I remember sitting down in my bathroom tub, and I was just crying out, like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, God help me. I didn't even know who God was. I was just calling out for any kind of help, because I had nothing else. And then I remember calling one of my friends that I knew in high school. Her name is Joy, and I called her, and I was like, can you just please pray for me? And I didn't even know what I was asking for prayer for. I didn't know what it was going to even do, but I just had nothing else. It was nothing else, nobody else to call. And I remember calling her, and when I called her, she was praying things that I had never even heard. And she was like, don't worry, like, the Lord is going to cover you. He's going to keep you. And it had been a few months that had gone past, but I had started to, like, journal out my prayers. Still during that time, I didn't even know who the Lord was. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just writing it down in hopes that something would come through. And then I want to say February of that year, I think it was 2021, I ended up having an event to go to for my hair products. And prior to that, my kid's dad was supposed to be keeping them because we had separated. I had moved out of the house, and we were just kind of like going back and forth with the kids. And I remember asking him to keep the kids that night so I can get the rest of my things together for the pop-up shop. And then he came back and he dropped the kids off, and he said, I'll just be transparent. He said, buying Chick-fil-A for the kids ain't cheap. And he drops the kids off and he leaves. But later that night, I ended up having to go back to the house because I had forgot my machine. Went back to the house, the door was open, and I was like, okay, nobody's in the house, the door is unlocked. And we had a neighbor that he would often go to her house. And I went next door and I opened the door, and he ended up being there with a girl. And then from there, I just walked out, I grabbed my stuff, and I just went back to my friend's house. And that night, I just continued to prepare everything. I got up that morning, everything seemed to be fine. I got to the pop-up shop, I set up everything was going well. And then one of my friends was talking, and he's like one of those guys that's like, he has this big ego or whatever, and he carries it, and he said something, and whatever he said kind of triggered something in me, and I just lost my mind in that sense. And everything around me looked different. I started to have like a panic attack. I started to have the conversations that was around me was different. And I remember looking at my uncle and telling him, I was like, you left me, like, you let me be here. And I didn't even know what I was saying to him, but I do remember saying that. He was like, hold on, wait. And he realized that I was serious, and he grabbed me and he took me out. And then as I'm talking to him, he told my friend, he was like, get her in the car. And I remember sitting in the car, like, losing my mind, saying all this stuff. I was really upset, and I started recording this video that I was going to post on Instagram, and I ended up not posting. She ended up taking my phone from me. And in the middle of me having that conversation, I heard, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And then when I heard that, I was just like, what is that? And I sat for a moment, but then I went back to, like, crying and being hysterical and not being able to control myself. And she was like, you gotta calm down. And then I heard it again, and I was like, that's from the Bible. I was like, I don't even read the Bible. I was like, but that sounds like it's from the Bible. And then I looked at her and I was like, you don't believe in God, like, he's real. And what I just heard, I was like, I gotta go back and tell the kids. And she was like, go back and tell the kids. She was like, you're not even in the right state of mind to be going to tell anybody anything. You're gonna sound crazy. And she was like, and don't post that online because you have kids and people can use that against you. And I was like, whatever. And so she just took the phone, but I couldn't get that out of my head. And then after I gave her my phone, we drove up to her house, and like I was saying, I couldn't forget it. And then when we got to her house, she has this wooden gate, and it's a plain wooden gate. I've never seen anything on it before, but I remember seeing Matthew on the gate. And I was just like, what is that? And there was nothing there. So I knew I couldn't share that, or I couldn't tell anybody that, because she really would have thought I was losing my mind. Because I also was losing my mind at the same time. And then after that, I went in the house, and I don't know, it just changed from there. I sat down on the couch, and I was like, I really need to tell the kids that God is real. And I was like, y'all don't believe. I was like, but God is real. And then just from there, just my life just took a whole different turn. And I was just like, all right, Lord, you showed me, and now you answer my prayers. Here I am. And then slowly from there, everything started to leave. I remember praying and asking the Lord to take anything in my life that wasn't for me. And the first thing to go was my relationship of 8 years. And that was a process, but I also ended up being homeless. I also ended up not having work. I also was separated from my kids for a certain point at a time, because when I was able to work, I had to be separated from them. But that separation from them was hard, but the part that was easy was like finding the Lord in that and trusting Him during that. So I needed that time to focus on where He was leading me to.
So how did you find the Lord in that?
How did I find the Lord in that? From speaking to me. Like it took that one word after praying, not even knowing who I was praying to, for it to be answered that way and so clear. I couldn't deny it. It was nothing. I didn't know how to explain it. I couldn't put my fingers on it. It's not like I was sitting down. I grew up in a church and these are words that I heard, or I was studying the Bible. It's not like I was doing any of the things that I was supposed to be doing. I was literally dead in sin, no Lord around at all. So to hear something so clear and to also know exactly, I still can't explain it completely, other than being like, it was just clear. It was clear to me that was me praying what I prayed, and then having my friend pray for me, and her not knowing anything about my life because I hadn't talked to her in years other than that moment. And then to hear that, I was just like, that's God. But it just clicked for me. So that's how I found the Lord in that. During that time, I was alone. I didn't have anybody that showed up the way I needed them to. No conversation was gonna fix it. And then on top of that, it was the one person that I love the most above everything was the one person that broke me the most. And not only that, he pushed me into a space where the one thing I was afraid of actually happened to me. So from that, when the Lord showed up the way He did by speaking to me and grabbing my attention, I couldn't hold on to the one thing that, I loved Him, but it wasn't enough to keep me at that point, because the one thing I was afraid of actually showed up, which was me losing my mind. And me losing my mind, you can't come back from that. Is one thing. Like, people think losing your life just means like death. You lose your mind, you're not the same. And in that, I would have lost everything. I would have lost myself. I would have lost my kids, and everything around me would have been lost. So it wasn't just, oh yeah, you had a little breakdown. No, I could have not been the same. I could have not been sitting here, but the Lord didn't allow that to happen. And I wasn't going to stay in something that was going to keep me in that state of mind, because if He spoke to me once, who's to say that He was going to show up and be like, hey, I told you it was going to break you. I couldn't come back from that. So it was just, Lord, you said give it up, I'm letting it go. I don't want to keep what's hurting me, and I don't want to keep what's like, there's more, more than I do, clearly. And I went into this thinking that I knew more by being in this relationship out of wedlock and doing all the things that I should have been doing, being in the world, and thinking that this is the person that I was going to marry. Yet it was the person that he became the devil in my story. He became the devil in my story and the devil in my life, because the more I poured out, the more it was taken from me, to the point where I had nothing else to take. The only thing that would have been taken was my life, literally. It would have physically, or not physically because I wasn't suicidal, but mentally. So pretty much I'm dead after that. I don't exist, because I don't have my mind. I can't function the way the Lord wants me to in the first place, or the way I was made to. And then my kids lose out. They don't have their mom anymore, like mentally, physically there, but I can't show it for them. That brokenness that could cause in them, it wasn't worth it. I didn't want them to be in a tragic situation in the first place, and I didn't want tragedy in their life based on like things that happened to me in life, and I didn't want to expose them to unnecessary trauma. So once that happened, I was like, my kids can't lose me like that. That's why after the Lord was like, no weapon formed against me shall prosper, and he showed up that way, and then showing me Matthew on the gate, and then me realizing that was him, I was like, whatever has to go has to go. Whatever I need to do, I have to do. Whether that means I figure out how to read the Bible, or I pray for whatever. If I prayed for this not knowing him, now that he showed up, if I pray for everything else and really be faithful and doing it with my whole heart, not out of need, but out of wanting to know him in a better life. And that process, after you removed my relationship, then because that was slow, kind of. It was slow, but it was fast at the same time. We were separated outside of the home at first for a little bit. I was staying at my friend's house after that all had happened, but then I ended up going back, and we were just like co-parenting. It was just like we barely speaking. He was trying to co-parent, and then he ended up getting locked up. And then after he got locked up, that's when the homelessness came in. I ended up finding out that none of the bills were paid, and it was to the point where I couldn't pay for that. And not only that could I not pay for it, I didn't want to stay in a home where there was so much brokenness in it in the first place. So I just started praying. I didn't know how to pray, but I just prayed the way I prayed when the Lord answered my other prayers. I was just like, Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have any money. I don't have any way to work. I don't have any of these things. I'm about to not have a place to stay. And my kids had to stay with my friend while I was going through all that. I didn't want them to be in the house with me with no lights, cold water, and having to leave soon. So I was there. And then my mom ended up having an extra car, and she was like, here, you can use this for work. And I had been putting in applications. And I don't even remember what applications I was putting in, but I remember getting a phone call and somebody telling me that I had put in this application for this job, this messenger job to like deliver stuff. And I was like, I don't even have a car. I don't have a car. How am I going to deliver stuff? And they told me that the interview was that Thursday. So that's when my mom ended up calling me and telling me about the car. So I was like, all right, that's perfect. So I go to the interview, and right on spot, he was like, you got the job. And I was just like, I didn't even have registration for the car. That was required, and insurance. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to need your registration and your insurance. I was like, well, I don't have that right now. He was like, okay. And just let me have the job. And I was like, I can't deny that. I don't even remember putting in the application for that specific job because I knew I didn't have a car. I was looking for something that I could walk close to. Nope. So I knew that was the Lord. And then I got a phone call from a house that was like 5 minutes up the street, literally right across from my church. And I was like, all right, and I drive up the street. And once I get up the street, I meet with a lady, and I instantly just got chills all over my body. And I went start talking to her, and I'm walking in the house, and she goes, I think this house is yours. And I was like, what? She was like, just have all the stuff. She was like, I think it's a good fit for you. It was really nice. It had a really nice backyard, kind of like this, where I could go and sit out with the kids. There was a sunroom. There was a place where I could pray. There was a place for like the kids to have their own space and for me to have my own space. It was not something I was expecting to get. I was looking for like the tiniest apartment I could find. It was bigger than what I could imagine. And even when I didn't have the funds, they ended up showing up. I just started to read the Bible more. I didn't really understand it, but I was like, the more I read, the more I'm sure he'll reveal to me. I just stay faithful, and I just continue to like pray. And then I started praying for community, and then my lovely friend showed up. And what's so funny, before that time, you just started to show up on my timeline. You started to show up on the stories, and I was just like, all right, Lord, I'm praying for community, I'm praying for friendship. And then you ended up reaching out. So it was like one prayer after another being answered, and him showing up more and more. The more I stayed faithful, and the more I just leaned on him, and the situations where I didn't know what was going to happen. And that was just, it just strengthened my faith. It made me not be able to deny him or walk away, because prayer after prayer had been answered in ways that I wasn't even imagining or expecting it to come in. And then that started to show up in just the way that I lived my life, or the conversations that I had. And then even being in that house, it just brought so much peace. It brought peace for my kids as well. And then after that, about being in the house for about a year, my car ended up being totaled. So I was using my mom's car, and then eventually I had to get a new car, because on the way of doing like one of my deliveries, the car caught fire while I was driving. And it caught fire in the middle of the highway, like they rushed out of my car and called my stepdad. So I was like, now I don't even have a source of work. I just got this house, whatever. And then I didn't stress too much, but it was kind of like, all right, now what am I about to do? And I remember being like, I just need to pray. Like, just keep praying, keep reading. And then after that happened, a few days had passed, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to have to go to the dealership. And it was like, oh, is this going to cost this much? And I was like, what am I going to do with that? So I called my mom, and they was like, the only way you can do it is if you get like a co-signer, we can lessen the payment, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, my mom was not doing this for nobody. I know it was the Lord, because she was not. So she came in, she ended up co-signing, and I ended up being able to get a newer car that was better for me. And then I had that car for a while, and then it ended up being totaled. And within, I want to say 6 months of having it, yeah, that was crazy. 6 months of having it, but during that time, my dad had also been going through like some health stuff, and I remember the Lord telling me to go to California and help him. And mind you, he had just given me this house within a year. I had just got my car within 6 months, and now I'd be uprooted from something that he gave me peace in. And I sat and I thought, and I was like, if I could trust him when I didn't know him, I should be able to trust him while I know him. And I was just like, all right. And then I packed up me and my kids. We ended up going to California. But during California, oh my, that taught me a whole new level of like the Lord, because I had to sit. I didn't know how to be still. And I was reading the scriptures, but I still didn't fully understand it. And I remember praying like, Lord, like, I'm reading, but I'm not really understanding. And I remember, so that's to say, if you don't know how to read the Bible and you're not getting any understanding, do not lose hope. He will show you when you ask. So I ended up asking him to show me, like, please dumb this down for me so I understand it. And I woke up in the middle of the night at like 3 o'clock in the morning. It was like, read Jeremiah. For the first time, I was able to decipher the Bible word for word for word. And that just built my faith even more, because I was able to read and I was able to understand. And not only during that time, he had given me community through youth, and then ended up Bible study. So the Bible studies definitely helped grow my faith, and be able to understand the word more and be able to break it down. But even during that time, it taught me how to step into who he's calling me to be, because then you transition it over to me having to lead the Bible studies, made my relationship with him have to grow deeper and be more obedient and be more consistent, and not just go to him for things that I want, but go to him because I want to be next to him, and go to him because I know that without him, my life is a wreck. I just was able to, like, in this process of being in California, I was able to, like, really, like, my faith grew a lot more, and I was able to get back to things that I hadn't experienced in a long time. From being able to play with my kids, like really play with them, climbing in trees, learning how to skateboard. And I hadn't rode a bike in years. My brother had this BMX bike, and during that time, like when I was a kid, we used to like have a bike club. The whole neighborhood all had bikes, and if you had the baddest BMX bike with the nicest pegs, he had one. So I was like, I'm riding this bike. So just being able to give them that, because the Lord gave me my joy back, was a beautiful thing. Because that's how that's how I wanted to be a mom for my kids in the first place, but I couldn't, because I didn't have any joy to give them. I can give them bits and pieces of what I could give, but the Lord was able to allow me to give them like full joy, and that was good for me. I got back. My dad had gotten further away from the Lord. He started to not really listen to him or hear him. And in that, because I was listening to the Lord, and because I wasn't panicking, because I wasn't doing all these things that he felt like I should have been doing in the moment, because he was like worried about, because we got approved for the house, we got the deposit, but the deposit on the house, but he was like, all right, now we got to pay next month, but like, I don't have a job, you don't have a job. And I was like, if the Lord sent us here, he's going to provide. So I wasn't really worried about it. And mind you, none of that, like, you know, the apps that you can work by yourself, none of those was working on my phone. So even though those, like, none of them, I was trying everything I possibly could. None of them was working. And I was still putting in application after application. Nobody was calling. Nobody was answering. And my dad was like, you're doing nothing. And I was like, I'm actually doing stuff. You just don't see it. But that put like tension in the home, because he stopped leaning on his faith, and because I wasn't worried and I was letting the Lord just pour into me. Like, if I provided all these things, I can provide. But it also showed me that even when somebody has faith, that doesn't mean that your faith, like, you can rely on their faith for you. And that just taught me, like, in situations like that, I need to lean on my own faith. And it caused a lot in between me and my dad, because my faith began to grow, but his began to like lessen. And it got to the point where it got really bad, and I ended up having to leave because I couldn't hear God anymore. And I was like, I never want to be in a place in my life where I can't hear from God. And that means I'm leaving my dad. If that means I gotta leave a relationship, if that means I gotta leave my mom, or heck, even when my kids get grown, if that means I have to separate myself, then that's what I have to do, because I can't put anybody else above the Lord. And I never want to be in a place in my life where I don't have him, because I've witnessed what that was. And I have hardships now. Not like my life is perfect or everything is peachy. It's not. Even right now, as I'm talking on this camera, nothing's great. But the great part is like having the Lord in it and having joy in it and being able to trust him and believe in him and know that if he brought me through all of that stuff before, even where I'm sitting at right now, he's going to bring me through that. So I was just strengthening me for where I'm at now.
Surely your goodness and your unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. Hi, Tan. It's a pleasure to meet you. I've seen how you walk with the Lord, and I needed to probe you. Hi, Nina. How does she know my name? The pleasure's mine, but please understand the woman you're speaking with is see-through. Do you see you? See, the question you inquire to ask is, how did I get here? Wait, how did she know I was going to ask that? But it's your brokenness that put me at the feet of the cross. Your longing to feel safe, loved, seen. Your mental break. Your desire to be set free from the hands of your enemies. So when you ask the question, look in the mirror. The answer is, when God found you, he set me free. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along the right paths, bringing honor to his name. So no, Nina, thank you for your brokenness. Thank you for your pain. And thank you for all that you endured. Because if it wasn't for your brokenness, I would have never met the Lord. If it wasn't for your longing, I wouldn't be at his feet. So the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for your sacrifice that opened up my eyes. It is because of you that I walk the way that I do. And it is because of the Lord that I stand strong in his truth.